Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Gopi Jana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Jayo Radha Gopinath Shri Radhe Jayo Jagannatha Jayo Baladeva Jayo Subhadra Jayo Gauranitai Jayo Gauranitai Jayo Gauranitai Jayo Jayo Prabhupada Jayo Jayo Prabhupada Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravajakacharyaste Shri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananda Gauri Vaishnava Ki All glories to assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Caitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Ekadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Deham Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakamitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalam pangam langayate giri yat kripa tamam vande Shri Gurun Dinata. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna to all the Vaishnavas in Mayapur TV, YouTube and Facebook. I've been given the task of speaking on the glorious prayers of Gajendra in the 8th canto, in the 3rd chapter. But today, before I enter into the beautiful prayers, I wanted to speak a little bit on the importance or the glories of prayers itself. It's very important for us to build our mood before we speak these prayers. So today, I will speak on the importance or the glories of prayers itself. And I will also briefly touch on the speciality of Gajendra prayers. And tomorrow we will briefly see the pastime of Gajendra just to set the scene, just like Srila Prabhupada at the start of Bhagavad Gita is setting the scene for us. So I'll try to set the scene. And then with that mood, hopefully with the same mood of Gajendra, we will read his prayers and glorify the Supreme Lord. So we have so many prayers in Srimad Bhagavatam, right? And we've over the last few weeks we've been hearing so many great Vaishnavas speaks very beautifully about different prayers. And even for the next few weeks we'll be hearing wonderful prayers that are spoken in Srimad Bhagavatam. So why do we read these prayers? Why do we recite these prayers? Why do we give them so much importance? Why can't we just compose prayers? We also have some intelligence. We have, a mouth and a hand to write. Why can't we just compose our own prayers, whatever our feelings are for the Supreme Lord, and speak to Sri Sri Radha Gopinath? Why is it important that we listen to these prayers? There's few main reasons as to why our composition do not work. So I've listed two. The first one is that we do not know what to pray, or we don't even know how to pray. That is why our compositions doesn't work. And the example of this is given in the beautiful verses of Shishtastakam written by Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. He first writes, he tells us how one needs to pray. He says, Trinadapi sunichena, darorapi sahishuna, amanina manadena, kirtaniya sadahari. So he's bringing us to that mood in which we need to pray. We need to be in a humble state of mind. We should be more tolerant than a tree. And finally, we should have no sense of false prestige. When we go in front of Gopinath and say, "Oh, Gopinath, please give me, a good job or make sure I'm healthy," and then it doesn't happen, we should be very tolerant. And we should also have no sense of false prestige that we go in front of Gopinath and say, "We deserve this, Gopinath, give it to me. I've done 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna mantra for the last 20 plus years, so I deserve to go back home, back to Godhead. So, please grant me that wish." So we think that we deserve to get things, especially from other people and especially from Krishna, because we've done devotional service. But here Lord Chaitanya is saying we should have no sense of false prestige, and we should be tolerant. And the next verse, he tells us what we need to pray. He said, "Na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim, kavitam va jagadisha kamare, mama janmani janmaneshware, bhavatad bhakti rahitu khitve." Na dhanam, I don't want any wealth. Na janam, na sundarim, I don't even want a beautiful woman. Kavitam va jagadisha kamare. So I don't even want to be a poet. What do I want to be? What do I pray for? Birth after birth. I want to do causeless devotional service to your lotus feet. But we pray exactly the opposite. We said, "Give me dhanam, give me janam, give me also sundaram." And by composing poets, we also want to be great kavis or great poets. So Lord Chaitanya is teaching us what mood and what we need to pray. But our prayers are almost always selfish. And they're usually asking Krishna to solve a particular problem. But Lord Chaitanya's prayers, even in the Shishtastakam, is out of pure selflessness. And our intentions are never ever pure. That's the first reason. We don't know what to pray and we don't know how to pray. Why our compositions don't work. The second reason is we do not know how to compose. So, as jivas, we inherently have certain mistakes. In the medical field, there's journal articles. There's different types of journal articles, where it's like observational data, and we speak about retrospective data, and we speak about cohort studies, etc., etc. And we know, as soon as we see these, we know the limitations that these different scientific studies have, so we take it with a grain of salt. Similarly, we as jivas inherently have multiple issues. And Prabhupada has very clearly pointed out. He says we have imperfect senses, we have a tendency to cheat, we make mistakes, and we are in illusion. So as soon as anything that comes out of a jiva trying to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we should take it with a grain of salt, if that person is not purified or self-realized. So, in deep illusion, there's different types of illusion. One, to start off with, the atheist, we don't believe in God. We don't believe that God exists. And then, even if we believe that God exists, we think that He's impersonal. If we go a bit further and says, okay, if He is personal, we think that He's just a mere mortal. He's just like you and me. And even if we think that He is not mortal, we start saying that we all are God. There's demigods, and there's people that say me God. So you call me God, I call you God. So these are the illusions that we are in. So we are completely impure. We have so many mistakes. We have a tendency to cheat, and we are full of mistakes. But the scriptures, on the other hand, are completely pure without any limitations. It is said in the Shastra that these scriptures or Vedas come out when Lord Mahavishnu takes a breath out. Just like the universes come out, the Vedas come along. And we know Mahavishnu is all pure, He's eternal, He's truthful, and He's always blissful. So similarly, the Vedas or the prayers in the Vedas that originate from the pores of Mahavishnu are eternal, they're all truth, they're all pure, and those who read them, or read these prayers, will always be blissful. So anyone who reads them under the guidance of a great Vaishnava in a proper sampradaya will be always blissful. So one might say, oh, okay, I'm in a proper sampradaya, so I can compose. It's fine. I'm learning the Shastras, I can also compose. But the Acharya has mentioned, even if we are in a proper sampradaya, and you are studying the scriptures properly under the guidance of a spiritual master, if we are not self-realized and we have not understood the Supreme Personality of Godhead and we are not matured, we should avoid composing. I've made this mistake. I've composed some little poems that I thought are so marvelous. And in my immaturity, I've also given it to some great Vaishnavas to read it. And out of their causeless mercy, they've said it's okay. But here the Acharyas is saying, even if you're in a proper sampradaya and if you're studying it properly, don't do it. If you're not mature or self-realized. So they compare this to be like a torchlight in front of the sunlight. We pick up a little torchlight, little soul picking up this torchlight and trying to enlighten the whole world. But if Krishna just sends one ray of sunshine, the whole universe will be enlightened. The sun that we have is just a spark of the Brahmajyoti that Krishna has sent to the material universe. Just a little tiny spark. That itself illuminates the whole world. So what will the little torchlight of us... We can't even illuminate one corner of the room with a torchlight. Even with thousands of torchlights, we can't illuminate one city. So this concept of us not able to be compose, or us not able to compose poems, will be illustrated in a beautiful, beautiful story that was narrated in Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. We all know Lord Chaitanya was born in Navadvip, and at the age of 24 he took sannyas, and for the next 6 years he traveled all over India, mainly South India and back to West, and at the age of 30 he comes back to Jagannath Puri, and in the 18 years that he's there, he focuses completely on meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead and relishing the beautiful pastimes in Srimad Bhagavatam and other scriptures. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in Jagannath Puri, the devotees from Bengal or Navadvip come often to visit Lord Chaitanya. And they come in the Chaturmasya, just before Jagannath Ratha Yatra. And they stay with him till the end of Chaturmasya, that's at the end of Kartik. So, they celebrate Jagannath Ratha Yatra, then there's Balram Jayanti, then Janmashtami, Radhashtami, and then into Kartik we have Gopastami and Deepavali and all these wonderful festivals. They celebrate all this with Lord Chaitanya. And finally, with a very heavy heart, they leave. So like this one year, when the devotees of Navadvip came, a wonderful Vaishnava, humble Vaishnava, who's also a poet, came along. And he composed a beautiful drama in a form of poetry. And this drama described about Jagannath, described about Jagannath Puri, described about Lord Chaitanya, and he described about Bhakti. So in his great enthusiasm, he found a devotee called Bhagavan Acharya. Bhagavan Acharya was a very humble devotee. It is said, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami writes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that this personality is a Gopa in Krishna Lila. So when Krishna comes down in this material world, he brings along his devotees. So this Gopa or Bhagavan Acharya is a Gopa in the spiritual world. And Bhagavan Acharya very nicely heard this narration with this beautiful drama. And as soon as he heard it, he was in great ecstasy. And he said, Jai, 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 Sadhu, Sadhu. You've written such wonderful, wonderful drama. Such wonderful. Everyone in this Jagannath Puri needs to hear this. So he goes and he brings some other devotees. All of these devotees are also Gopas in Krishna Lila. And he said, please narrate this again. Narrate this pastime. Narrate this beautiful drama to these people that have come from Navadvip. So he narrated again, and all of them with great enthusiasm say, Jai, 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 Sadhu, Sadhu, you've written so wonderfully. These Gopas, they are very innocent. They just see this face value of people and they accept everyone to be very great. They don't have city mentality. You know what city mentality is? Duplicity. And people from the village have another city mentality. They have simplicity. So these Vaishnavas were very simple, and they saw this beautiful drama. They just heard about the glorifications of Krishna, and immediately they were very impressed, and they're very enthusiastic. And they said, everyone should hear this. And Bhagavan Acharya immediately thought, Lord Chaitanya needs to hear this. But Lord Chaitanya, because he was in intense meditation, he had a screening process. Just like now in COVID, we have to temperature check, hand wash, make sure you're not in any hot spots before you enter. So similarly, Lord Chaitanya had a screening process. Why? Because he didn't want to waste his time listening to people who are not qualified. So the person that is responsible for screening was Swarup Damodar Goswami. To screen everyone before it reaches. It is said in Chaitanya Charitamrita in a part in that Lord Chaitanya once asked Swarup Damodar Goswami to even check Rupa Goswami's work. And Rupa Goswami is an exalted Vaishnava, has written everything. And Swarup Damodar Goswami looks at Lord Chaitanya and he says, are you asking me to review his work, or are you testing me to see how my screening process is? Because we all know that Rupa Goswami is a great Vaishnava and his composition are very, very deep. So like this, Swarup Damodar Goswami was a screening process. And when I mean unqualified, I mean that people who do not know how to compose properly. I'm gonna get slightly technical, might be, so just pay a bit attention a little bit. So when you write poetry by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they should also have rasas. If you don't understand the rasas, then the poetry will not satisfy. So we all know there's different rasas, there's Santa, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya and Madhurya, right? Even in this mature world, there's different rasas. A mother and a child, a husband and wife, etc., etc. If these rasas don't match, then the relationship doesn't fix or doesn't occur. There's an example in Brihad Bhagavatamrita where, Gopakumar, he's an eternal cowherd boy, eternal friend of Krishna. But we know he is going all over the place trying to search where Krishna is, and he finally ends up in Vaikunta. As soon as he sees Lord Vishnu, he recognizes him as Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he knows he's Krishna, and he's running, wanting to hug Vishnu. As he's running, Jay and Vijay block him. And they say, what are you doing? You can't hug the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is Mahavishnu. This is Lord Vishnu, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Gopakumar, in his Krishna Lila, he's got a Sakya ras. But Lord Vishnu in Vaikunta, he's got Aishwarya Bhav. These two rases don't mix. There's only Dasya in Vaikunta. So they don't mix. So similarly, if Hanuman goes to Goloka Vrindavan and he sees all the cowherd boys jumping on Krishna losing to the cowherd boys, what will Hanuman think? It's like, what is this? There's no way that Lord Ram and Krishna can be defeated. So the rasas won't work. So without understanding rasas, we can't properly, our compositions will not be rasa purna, will be rasa basa. Just like we have Nambas and Suddhanam. So Nambas is not pure, Suddhanam is pure chanting of the holy name. So similarly over here, it won't be rasa purna, but it will be rasa bas. So, even if we say Radhe Vishnu, it won't work, right? Because Radharani is in the Madhurya Bhas and Vishnu is Aishwarya Bha. We always say Lakshmi Narayan because both of them are in the same rasas. So just by composing these two words, if you say Radhe Vishnu, Radhe Vishnu, Vishnu Vishnu, Radhe Radhe, it won't work, right? So just even with two words we can't compose something properly, then imagine a whole set of poetry. So we think that we glorify the Lord, but unfortunately without understanding rasa bhavs or different rasas, we just write words. So to keep away this rasa bhas, Lord Chaitanya had a screening process. But Bhagavan Acharya first approached Swarup Damodar Goswami and he said, my dear Swarup Damodar, please, this poet is so wonderful. He's written such great poetry. And in a drama, he's glorified Jagannath and he's glorified Lord Chaitanya. You should definitely listen to this and you should let Lord Chaitanya listen as well. He will be very satisfied. So, initially, Swarup Damodar Goswami, he hears one line and he says, that's okay, it's fine. Just trying to brush it off. But Bhagavan Acharya comes again and again and again and he tries to convince Swarup Damodar Goswami. He says, please listen to this. You'll be very amazed and you'll be very inspired. You will definitely like it, and Lord Chaitanya will also. So please listen, so we can please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we can please Lord Chaitanya. So he said, okay, fine, call an assembly, call all the Vaishnavas, I will also come, and we will listen to this Vaishnava's poet or drama. So assembly was called, Surab Damodar Goswami comes, sits, and this great Vaishnava, or this Vaishnava from Bengal also comes. He takes the dust of every Vaishnava sitting there, including Surab Damodar Goswami, and he starts. The first line, he speaks, and everyone in the audience roar, Jai, Jai, Sadhu, Sadhu. Excellent, excellent line. You can't, no one can compose anything greater than this. Surab Damodar was in a grave face. And he said, he stopped the Vaishnava and he said, now tell me what the meaning of this verse is. So this Vaishnava, in a humble state of mind, he said, the first verse that I've written, it means Jagannath is just like the body, sitting in the form of wood. And Lord Chaitanya is like the soul. Because Lord Chaitanya has come to Puri, he's given life to Jagannath. And to this Lord Chaitanya, I offer my respectful obeisances. You see, it looks like he's glorifying Jagannath and he's glorifying Lord Chaitanya. But Swarup Damodar Goswami, upon hearing this, was furious. And he said, what kind of composition is this? You have no idea what you've written and you've just offended Krishna. And he gives 4 reasons as to why it's wrong. He says, first, you said you composed that the body and the soul of the Supreme Lord are different. We know in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Dehinosmin yata dehi kaumaram yavaram jara tata dehantara prapti dhirastatrana muyati. We are not the body, but we are the soul. But we also understand that Krishna is pure spirit and there's no difference between the body of Krishna and the soul. There's no difference. So Swarup Damodar Goswami is saying, how can you even write this silly thing? You're saying that there's difference. You're saying Jagannath is the body and Lord Chaitanya is the soul. How is it how is the body and the soul of the Supreme Personality of Godhead different? They're not. And the second, he says, how can you even compare Jagannath's body to the body of mere mortals like us, which is made up of bones, mucus and stool? Jagannath is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are known different. So how could you compare their body with our body? And then he goes on, he says, Lord, and you're comparing Lord Chaitanya to be just an Atma? Lord Chaitanya is the source of all Atmas. And you're comparing him to just be a mere soul. It's like saying you're comparing a forest fire with a little small tiny piece of grass on fire. That's how you're comparing between Lord Chaitanya and the Atma. So this is the 3rd mistake that we've done. And the last one, he says, you're stating that Jagannath and the deity are different. He says, just like Sakshi Gopal, we all know the story of Sakshi Gopal, how he walked all the way just to give witness. And then we know the story in Jagannath Puri, we know the story of Kirchor Gopinath. Just because Madhavendra Puri wanted he wanted to taste the kheer, just so he can prepare for his deity back in Vrindavan, Gopinath took some kheer and hid it behind him. And then he said to the pujari to give this to Madhavendra Puri. So Kirchor Gopinath and Sakshi Gopal are wonderful examples of how Krishna is not just a deity. We are in the false conception that, oh, look, Gopinath is made up of marble or Gopinath is made up of brass or wood. Jagannath is made up of wood. So here Swarup Damodar Goswami is saying, no. Krishna is non-different from the deity. When you see Krishna standing there, when you see Gopinath and Radharani standing there, they are standing there themselves. There is no doubt. Of course, we don't have the vision or the realization, but Swarup Damodar Goswami here is showing that. These are the reasons why your poetry is wrong. So this Vaishnava, after hearing this, was very humbled. He felt very remorseful. And he apologized to the devotees and took everyone's dust and put it on his head. And he apologized to Swarup Damodar Goswami. Seeing the humility of this Vaishnava, Swarup Damodar Goswami, out of mercy, instructed the Vaishnava. And he gave 2 instructions. He says, if you want to learn about Bhagavata or Bhagavad Dharma, read the compositions of great Vaishnavas and be at their lotus feet. Stop composing your own. So the first one is saying, if you want to learn, read the composition of great Vaishnavas and be at the lotus feet. Number 2, surrender completely to Lord Chaitanya and take his association. In his association, study the scriptures. Stop writing your own. So these are the 2 instructions that Swarup Damodar gave. 1, read the scriptures, read the prayers and the compositions of great Vaishnavas and be at their feet. Number 2, take the association of Lord Chaitanya and in his guidance, in his association, read the scriptures. Do not compose or do not write your own. So after hearing this, actually before that, the reason that Swarup Damodar Goswami says this is because there's multiple advantages to reading the scriptures or listening to the compositions of great Vaishnavacharyas. Number 1, they're composed not by mere mortals. These great Vaishnavas, even Srila Prabhupada writes beautiful poems. When he was going to the US, he also wrote multiple poems glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we see so many poems starting from the prayers from the first canto with Kunti Maharanis, and then goes to 10th canto. We have Gopi Geet and so on and so forth. We have so many prayers. All of them are not composed by mere mortals. They are composed by pure devotees who are completely liberated and have no faults. So that's the first advantage. Second, they're completely selfless. Their only prayer is, and they're begging for the upliftment of their consciousness as a primary prayer. We, as I said before, it's like, please give me janam, please give me dhanam, please give me a beautiful wife, etc., etc. That is our primary prayer. And right at the end is like, okay, Krishna, please also, give me liberation. But here, these Vaishnavas, the primary prayer is, please pick me up. Uplift my consciousness. Even Gajendra in the prayers doesn't write, please come save me from this crocodile. No. He says, please save me from this material universe. That is his primary prayer. Number 3, there's no rasabas. And there's no mistakes. And all of their compositions are in line with the scriptures. So you won't make any mistakes. Number 4, when we chant the qualities of the original composer, the qualities that they have also rise within our heart. Just like, this is form of association. Srila Prabhupada gives an example. If you put an iron rod in hot fire, it takes up the qualities as well. Similarly, if you're with a smoker, you'll also start smoking. But the same thing, if you are listening and reciting these beautiful compositions of these great Vaishnavas, you will also bring the qualities that they possess within your heart. And lastly, the most important of all is Krishna showers unlimited blessings on devotees that recite prayers of his devotees, because Krishna gets reminded of that Vaishnava. Krishna, for example, Krishna doesn't forget Gajendra. Krishna doesn't forget Kunti Maharani. But we are doing some service to Krishna by reminding Krishna of Kunti Devi, or reminding Krishna of the gopis, or reminding Krishna of Gajendra. So Krishna is very pleased and he showers blessings. So we should not endeavor to compose poems or prayers but we should endeavor to relish what is already composed. So, hearing these chastisements and instructions from Swarup Damodar Goswami, this Vaishnava was very humbled, and he was also devastated. He was not devastated because Swarup Damodar Goswami instructed him or gave advice. He was thinking, just by one line, I've offended the Supreme Personality of Godhead so much. I've written a whole set of drama. How many offenses I would have done? So he was thinking like this, and he was telling Swarup Damodar Goswami. So Swarup Damodar Goswami then replies, and he says, don't worry. You might have committed a lot of offense, but Vakya Devi, who's Saraswati Devi, she will turn your poem and will make it as a praise and offer it to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he gives a beautiful example. He gives the example of Indra during Govardhan Leela. Indra, when he was sending all these lightning bolts and everything, he speaks a verse insulting Krishna. He says, Vachalam balisham staptam agnya panditamanina. He says, Vachalam. This boy Krishna is very talkative. He keeps talking. And he says, balisham. He's very childish. He looks like he's 5 or 7 years old, but his mind is only like a 2-year-old. He's very, very childish. And then he says, Taptam. Krishna is so arrogant. He doesn't bow down to anyone. And he said, Agnya. He's very foolish. And Pandita Manina. With all these qualities, Krishna thinks he's like a great Pandit. Pandita Manina. So, but he says, Vakya Devi or Saraswati swapped or changed. She kept the same words, but she presented it differently to Krishna. For Vachalam, she said, Krishna only talks the truth. Not talkative, he only talks the truth. And he says, Balisha. Balisha means, Krishna, you're the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but you've come down like a little child to give pleasure to the devotees and to pull at the heartstrings of your devotees in Vatsalya Bhav. You've come down as a beautiful child. And Stapta. Saraswati Devi says, Krishna, you're so great, you don't have anyone to bow down to. And Agnya, he says, Krishna, you're not foolish. There's no knowledge that you do not know. And finally, Pandita Manina. He says, this is the conclusion of all the Pandits. So, Saraswati Devi, even though she used the same words, she swapped it and glorified Krishna. So, Swarup Damodar Goswami says, yes, see, like this, Saraswati Devi will change what you've written and give it to Krishna. So, even if we've composed anything, this gives me some hope. Even if we composed anything, and we would have committed a lot of offenses and raspas, but Saraswati Devi, out of her causeless mercy, will swap it and give it to the Supreme Personality of Godhead as praise. So these are the two reasons why our composition shouldn't work, and we should avoid it unless we are matured and self-realized. Now finally, in the last 10 minutes, we'll discuss about the speciality of Gajendra Perez himself. So again, a little bit of technicality, but hopefully you can understand. In the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 4th chapter, a beautiful example is given of the sun, the clouds, and our human eyes. It is said the sun forms clouds. By evaporating the water, the sun forms clouds. And when these clouds cover the sun, the eyes, the human eyes, are not able to appreciate its power, and also is not able to appreciate the sun. But when the sun splits open the clouds and gives it sunshine, the eyes can see the sun. Does that make sense? So, number one, the sun causes the clouds. Number two, the sun, when it splits the clouds, it gives sunshine. Number three, this allows the eyes to see the sun and also its power. And The sun, when it wants, when he chooses, hides behind the clouds. The cloud is not superior to the sun. Because the sun creates the clouds, the sun chooses to hide behind the clouds, not the clouds hiding the sun. And finally, the eyes alone cannot split open the clouds to see the sun. It is the sun's causeless mercy that it splits open and it shows. So this verse compares, the sun is like Krishna. The clouds is like material nature of false ego. And the eyes are like the soul. So Krishna is the source of this material nature. And the soul cannot pierce through this cloud of material nature to see the sun. But when Krishna splits through the material nature out of his own causeless mercy, sending down his mercy, we, the soul, can understand our own position and also understand Krishna's great position. And finally, when the Lord wants, he can hide himself behind material nature and cover himself. Does that make sense? Hopefully it makes sense. So, now the Shastras then explain what makes Krishna split open the material nature and gives the causeless mercy. And this is explained in the first verse of the Vedanta Sutra. So the first verse of the Vedanta Sutra, as we know, is Atito Brahma Jignasa. So Atito Brahma Jignasa is we are inquiring about the transcendental truth. So the Shastra says when one inquires about the transcendental truth, that will send Krishna will split open the material nature and gives down his mercy. But further on, we should understand in what mood that we should inquire. We should not inquire just to get knowledge or to blaspheme or to find faults. And this is explained in the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we have the first verse of Vedanta Sutra, and the mood in which we should inquire is explained in the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. It says, Satyam Param Dhimahi. So the last three words of the first verse of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So what is this Satyam Param Dhimahi? We should want to meditate about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to hold him in our heart, to hold the truth in our heart. Dhimahi is like meditation. Satyam Param Dhimahi. You want to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we want to inquire about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's wonderful when the composer, the writer of the Vedas, they write in a way that they complete a circle. So the first verse of Vedanta Sutra continues with the first verse, is linked with the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and how we need to meditate is explained in the last verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The last verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam explains that if one chants the holy name of Krishna, congregational chanting, Nama Sankirtan, and bows down to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is called meditation. So we saw in Vedanta Sutra, we saw Atita Brahma Jignasa. Srimad Bhagavatam says one should meditate, and how to meditate is explained in the last verse. You have to do Nama Sankirtanam and you have to bow down to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is confirmed again in the last verse of the Vedanta Sutra. The last verse of the Vedanta Sutra mentions Anavriti Shabdat. Anavriti Shabdat. It's mentioned twice. Anavriti Shabdat, Anavriti Shabdat. So Anavriti means what? Anna Bilashita Sunyam Jnana Karmadi Anavritam. We read that in Nectar of Devotion. So Anavritam, removing this material nature. Anavriti, removing this material nature. How? Shabdat, by sound, by the Supreme Person. The reason why it is said twice, number one, because it's important. So the repetition is important. And secondly, it is said by the Acharyas, they say very sweetly, they say, when the when the jiva goes to back home, back to Godhead, all the demigods, they shower flowers. And they don't just say Jai. Right? They say Jai, Jai. They glorify this devotee as he goes up or she goes up to the eternal realm or transcendental realm. So here they also say Anavriti Shabdat, Anavriti Shabdat. He was liberated by the sound vibration of the holy names of Krishna. So we can see, the reason why Krishna comes splitting down is if we inquire with a mood that we want to meditate, we meditate how? By chanting the holy names of Krishna and bowing down to him. And finally, it is confirmed also in the last verse of the Vedanta Sutra that we can relieve ourselves from the material nature by Shabda or sound. So interestingly, Gajendra prayers, in the whole of Bhagavatam, in all the prayers, Gajendra prayers is the only prayers in which the names of the Lord is chanted and obeisances are placed at the lotus feet of the Lord after every single glorification. So the process of chanting the holy names and paying obeisances of the Supreme Lord combined together are only in these one prayers. So, in Sanskrit, when you have the last three letters A-Y-A, Aya, that means you're paying obeisances. So I'm just going to read one verse of the Gajendra prayers. It says, Nama Shantaya Gauraya Mudaya Gunadamine Nirvisheshaya Samyaya Namo Jnana Ganayacha. So it is saying Shantaya. So if you're saying, when you're in Yajna, we say Krishnaya Namaha, Vasudevaya Namaha. So similarly in this one, Shantaya, meaning the Krishna is very Shanta. And Aya, you're paying obeisances to this form. And you're saying Gauraya, the angry form of Krishna, you're paying obeisances. Mudaya, Nirvesheshaya, you're always paying obeisances. So like this, Gajendra prayers goes on like this. With every name, Gajendra is paying obeisances. So by chanting these prayers, you do both the things that allow you to hold Krishna in the heart, which allows Krishna to break open the material nature, come down and shower his blessings. So in this class we've understood, number one, do not compose unless you're mature and self-realized. Number two, read the prayers of the Vaishnavas because they have multiple advantages and it reminds Krishna of these devotees, therefore giving us more blessings. And number three, out of all prayers, Gajendra prayers have both the prerequisites. Number one is chanting the holy names. Number two, obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Has both these prerequisites that will force Krishna to tear open the material nature and give us blessings so we can understand our position and we can also see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is why Gajendra prayers, out of all the prayers in the Srimad Bhagavatam, are very important. So with this understanding, hopefully tomorrow we will have a mood to deeply meditate on these prayers of Gajendra and understand these prayers of Gajendra. It only takes, Amarendra Prabhu in one of his lectures mentions, it only takes about 7 minutes to recite the whole of Gajendra prayers. We can even do it while we shower or while we're making lunch or whatever. So when one can recite these prayers, any prayers, but especially Gajendra prayers, one is able to attract the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in this mood, hopefully tomorrow we can concentrate. We can sit down, not concentrating on anything else, but listen to the beautiful prayers of Gajendra and hopefully learn them, recite them, and get the blessings of Sri Sri Radha Gopinath. I'll end here. And tomorrow we'll see you all again for the glorious prayers of Gajendra. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai.